Hand up, we were wrong. That's how this starts. Brian Rauf from Heat Check CBB, GregWaddell, Sleepers Media here. We said in our preview of this Auburn-Arkansas game that we were both taking Arkansas. We like a home underdog. Expected Bud Walton to be jumping. Honestly, I think Bud Walton was ready to jump. The Razorbacks didn't give them much of a reason to jump. This game was close for a bit. It was within striking distance at halftime, 7-point game at half. And then the next 10 minutes of the game was just an absolute slaughter from the Auburn Tigers.
Yep.
It was one of the ugliest halves I've seen the team play this year. Brian, what did you see?
Just that. I saw a team that kicked it to an extra gear on the same time. It didn't look like Arkansas stopped caring, per se. But I think they kicked it down a couple of notches the same time Auburn did. It if you told me Arkansas came out and played the second half after being up 20 at halftime against UT Arlington or something, they played with that kind of effort and performance as opposed to being in a relatively close game with a conference rival. Mm-hmm. That was how it looked to me. Auburn came out and met the moment, kicked things in the overdrive the way that Bruce Pearl teams do. They showed that elite kind of spurt ability that feels like an avalanche. We typically only see it at Auburn Arena. We really see it at Auburn Arena where it's just you have this inevitable avalanche that's coming at you. It felt like that, but to have that happen at Bud Walton Arena was not something that I expected. And I didn't expect Arkansas to let that happen to them, but they kind of just rolled over and did and played into it, which surprised me.
Yeah, I feel like when you watch an unraveling in a game that's extended, right? Because there's the 12-0 run, the Evan Miyakawa kill shot, right? Sometimes that happens in 2-minute spans, and you're just like, whoa. When it happens over a 10-minute span, as it did in this game, and it might have even been longer, honestly. They won the second half 46-21. So cut up that second half, that 20 minutes, however you want to. And our point stands that Auburn was destroying them. But when it happens in extended fashion like that, to me, it's almost one of two things. Either one team is just so unconscious out of their minds playing flawless basketball, or the other team is just completely inept. And I don't think both of those usually happen together. And I don't really think for a 20-minute stretch, I don't think it's usually much of a mix of both. And in this game, I don't think it was a mix of both. I think this was entirely Arkansas's doing. I don't think Auburn had to work here at all. It wasn't like they were hitting crazy threes. I think most of their shots during this big quote unquote run were uncontested layups or dunks. Nobody near people. And I don't know what Arkansas was doing. I saw a lot of bad body language, and Brian, you know I'm a body language guy. I compared it to Michigan. I've watched every Michigan game this season. I just watched one in person last week. It was horrible. I left the game being that program needs a cleanse. And Arkansas is still a healthy program, but we haven't seen a must team that has all this extra stuff going on where they're not even playing basketball half the time. They're just kind of looking at each other like they all hate each other.
This was something we wondered about in the preseason when Eric Musselman just took every guard that was available in the transfer portal and only guards, right? Because they all couldn't be the guy. I knew they were all kind of leaving in the portal for bigger roles. And you get in this game, Menefield, who we thought could have a big game, given what he did in their last outing, was just chucking up shots left and right and was not being efficient with them at all. Tremont Mark did fine. He could have played better, but I thought he did fine. Devo Davis was nowhere to be found. L. Ellis only played 7 minutes. So you're kind of at this point, he's not a factor, right? Jalen Graham, Battle was, you didn't get pop from anybody. You didn't get juice from anybody. And those are the guys that we talked about in the preview were going to matter because of the depth of Auburn's guards and the potential to exploit their youth and their general erraticness. And Arkansas didn't try. I felt like they didn't try.
Yeah. Yes. The more I'm thinking it through, when you do the portal as aggressively as Muss does, it's very easy to blame everything that goes wrong on the portal. It's also very easy to give credit when things go right to the portal. And it's almost like that's the whole story, either good or bad. However your season goes, it's the portal. And Muss is just doing it louder and more aggressively than everybody else is. But the comparison I can make to my neck of the woods here in the Midwest is Brad Underwood, where we've seen Brad Underwood have years where he nails the portal and those teams look great. And it's all praiseworthy. Like, wow, you have this leg up on everybody else in this conference that doesn't love to use the portal. What's your secret sauce? And then a year like last year happens where you get Matthew Meyer, who's clinically insane, Sky Clark, who is arguably even more insane. I love you, Sky. Jaden Epps, who I don't know how he is wired, but he's not a team-oriented guy. And it all fell apart, right? Everything fell apart. And two of those guys are freshmen. They're not transfers, but I'm lumping them in with Matthew Meyer because Matthew Meyer's insane. And the level-headed transfer was Terrence Shannon, and he's currently suspended with a rape charge. So I don't like when you watch that. Again, Illinois had talent last year, but if you watch their games, it was like, oh my God, something's wrong here. And it led to a lot of attrition. It led to a total reset. Now, Brad's 6 months later fixed everything through the portal again. I think Muss will probably do that, but this year's combination is an insane combination, and I don't think it's going to get any better for Arkansas.
I don't think so either. And I think two thoughts on this. One, we've talked about Arkansas in the past, and pretty much every year Muss has been there, is that they generally don't look great the first half of the season. And then by the end of this month or early February, they're back to looking like a team that can go make the Elite Eight in the NCAA tournament or make the second weekend. And then they go do that. And this doesn't necessarily matter. Like, Muss is great at getting his team to peak at the right time. But this team has legitimate flaws and concerns that make me wonder if that's actually going to happen this year. Like in the past, you could see it. They just weren't playing well. But there are some things going on here, and I think some just roster construction things aside from simply not playing well, right? And you bring up the portal. The tough part with the portal is that guys are in there for different reasons, right? Some guys, coach got fired, looking for a new start for any number of personal reasons. Some guys and a lot of guys want to boost their value, right? They almost come in with this mercenary attitude of, I'm here to play for this team, but I'm hoping to boost my draft stock, or I'm here because I got paid more NIL money. And they're not as invested into the program and what you are trying to do as a coach, particularly, and I'm going to say particularly in this case, given the lump of guards we've talked about, particularly when you don't have the role that you want, or maybe were sold or were told you to compete for, did not win it, and now you're sulking a little bit, right? Like, I think that leads to some a lack of buy-in that can bleed into a locker room in general. And I don't have any inside knowledge of what's going on with Arkansas. This is all pure speculation based on kind of what we're seeing and body language and the way guys are playing on the court. But I think there's some of that going on where it's just guys aren't happy.
It's almost like, well, some of them are just like at the same position too, right? Like same position, same role. Al Ellis.
Yeah.
The story on Al Ellis, like he came from the most disastrous spot in college basketball last year. He was the high usage guy. Comes to Arkansas, you're thinking, ooh, refreshing new spot for a guy who does have skill. And early, he's looking like the high usage guy. Now he's not in the rotation at all. Menafield, I don't even know what the backstory or the deal is here. He's obviously a talent, but I think the timing of when he entered this team's playing rotation is a crazy one to me. Like, if Menafield was this guy and kind of the centerpiece from the moment the season started, I think we don't necessarily see as much animosity from within Arkansas at this.
Right.
But now Menafield's so sporadic, he's so crazy, and he's good. Like, honestly, Menafield in this game doing the crazy Menafield things was the best the Arkansas offense looked. So you have to embrace it. But because he's
Right.
like that, like guys, I thought Tremont Mark was kind of just standing watching the whole game. And Tremont Mark has been really good for Arkansas this year. And it's going to take him and Menifeld are going to need time to figure out how to play together because they do not look like they're on the same page.
They don't. And again, that is something Muss is great at figuring out and getting guys to get on the same page. But I don't think he's had a group that has been on like this far apart at this point in the season, what appears to be this far apart. Most teams don't have a linear trajectory in terms of starting in one place and finishing in another that is steady, but it's generally pretty steady. There are some ups and downs in there, but it's a general uptick, kind of like the stock market, where it's up and down, but you look overall and it's pretty linear, even though you had ups and downs along the way. This is not linear. Like you go back to what we're thinking about Arkansas for the Duke game. This entirely different feeling around this program. It's an entirely different feel after getting butts beat like this. Like it's not, they're regressing.
Yeah. Do you trust Muss? It's my final Arkansas question. You said he's good at figuring this out, and I agree with you that he is. This season, right now, on January 7th, do you trust Eric Musselman to get this done?
I trust Eric Musselman, yes. Do I think that he can turn this team into a tournament team? I have doubts about that. But like, no matter what happens this season does not change my opinion of Eric Musselman.
Okay. I like that take. I think that's the correct take, and I land in the same spot as you. I just think almost like how I feel about Brad Underwood, back to tie it to Illinois again. Like I trust Brad. I think he's a great coach for the most part. Last year, Brad Underwood looked like the worst coach in America. It was the roster he assembled, and yeah, he did it to himself, but he learned from that and kind of got some more level-headed guys next year. I think Muss could use a dose of that, and we will probably see that. Auburn side of things, because this is classic Auburn to me this year. We just spent the first 10 minutes of this video talking entirely Arkansas. I do think that was the story of the game. That's fine. But Auburn is quietly 12-2, 1-0, up to 5th nationally on KenPom right now, ahead of teams like UConn, North Carolina. Like this team is passing the eye test. They're passing the metrics test, and they're just winning games. Do you think that Auburn should be talked about more in the national scheme of things in college basketball right now?
Yes and no. I think their computer numbers are inflated because they've dominated relatively poor teams. Like they're one of those teams who are inflated because of margin of victory. Like BYU was that team in November and really December, and Auburn has become that team. We talked about this game being important for Auburn because it was their first test since the Baylor game in the opener, really, against a team that was kind of good. That was like somewhat at their level. And the impressive part was like won this game by 32. Like it's went about as well as you think it could go. Like Auburn's going to get talked about more as they play more and more good teams that are going to come up in the SEC here. If they keep doing this, like they're a team that's going to rise quickly in terms of the national landscape and the national conversation. That's why they're not there. They're playing at that level. Both their offense and defense are top 10 in KenPom. Like they're a well-rounded group. And I think they have the ability to be a top 10, top 15 team. I don't have them as high as the computers do. But this is a legit team. And I think that this game in particular wasn't one guy, right? You had 4 guys in double figures. 2 of them come off the bench. You went, 10 deep with guys who played 14 minutes. You had great defensive efforts from a lot of them. You had good offensive games from a number of them. Like this team is set up exactly the way Bruce Pearl wants his teams to be. Jani Broome is the star of it. You have some really good guards, some experienced guards, a lot of young guards who are very, very talented. Like this is an Auburn team that can win the SEC. I don't know if they will, but they can. They have to just play some more big games, I think, to get talked about more nationally, because those big games we thought they were going to have, Indiana, USC, turned out to not be that big of a game. So those are coming.
Yeah, that's like 12-2. The record looks great. There are some big name teams they've beaten, like the ones you said, Indiana, USC, now Arkansas. I'd throw Virginia Tech in there. With that said, don't think they've beaten a team that's going to be in the NCAA tournament for sure. Maybe like we're hoping Arkansas could maybe get there. Indiana is certainly a bubble team at best right now. So yeah, work to do. Maybe more prove it ground to come for Auburn. But I will say after this game, I am higher on this team than I was coming into this game. Clearly, I thought they would lose the game, but while I'm giving most of the credit to the horrible second half to just Arkansas imploding, I do think I saw some stuff from the Auburn dudes, is the best way I would put it. I know it's very advanced of me, Brian, but like the way, like Johnny Brooms or John I. Broom, just like he was feasting and he was almost looking at them like, I can't believe y'all are giving me this. And he let him know about it. And the more that I saw him elevate his game and get hungrier as he saw prey that was just dying and he went in for the kill. I feel like with him as the centerpiece, I buy that they have a little bit of a killer instinct that like at the bare minimum, this team's going to be tough. This team's not going to be afraid of road environments. They learned their lesson in the App State game. And I don't think, other than Kentucky, I don't think there's many teams in this conference that I think are more talented than Auburn at this point. And that includes Alabama. That includes Tennessee, who I really like. I think Tennessee's a better basketball team. But I think there's an argument that the duo of Broom and Holloway, with other guys around them, with Williams and Baker Mazzara, Katie Johnson still, like they got enough guys here. Like you said, everybody played. Nobody played more than 25 minutes. I think this could bode well for Bruce Pearl's team to surprise some people and maybe finish higher in the SEC standings than people expect.
I agree. One thing you have to keep in mind too with the SEC and their unbalanced scheduling, which is going to become even more unbalanced, is that there's always a team at the top that finishes at the top that is there because of their schedule, right? Looking at Auburn's, their next 4 games are against Texas A&M, LSU, Vandy, and Ole Miss. Like those are 4 very winnable games without really being tested in the SEC landscape against the top half. Play Alabama twice, but play Florida once, play Kentucky once, play Tennessee once. Like things set up here for, a big end of February and early March for Auburn in the SEC race, but you are avoiding having to play a lot of the big dogs twice. And that could make a big difference in the SEC standing. So certainly wouldn't surprise me to see them up there towards the end of the season, particularly with the way they're playing. Wouldn't surprise me to hear Janai Broom talked about as an All-American candidate around then too. I think them being off the national radar has kind of downplayed the kind of season that he has had, but that's only going to be down for so long. This is a good team. This is a very good team. And I think we need to start treating them as such.
Yeah, I love that. I would like to talk more Auburn. I think that's where I'm at the end of this. I'm like, I like this team. Why aren't we talking about them more? I will do my part, ladies and gentlemen. I promise to hold myself accountable on that. That's Brian Rauf from Heat Check CBB. I'm GregWaddell from Sleepers Media. Click subscribe on our YouTube channel so that you see all of our previews and recaps for the rest of the college basketball season. Thanks, Brian.